They sent Deathworld girl to war at 16. Now she's back, and her school won't look her in the eye. The principal's hands were shaking before she'd said a word. That was the first thing Rethoven logged. Not her name, not her file number, not the incident report still warm from the printer her hands. Administrator Velkos Prune held a stylus in both of them, the way a drowning person holds something that floats, and the girl sitting across from him had not yet spoken, had not yet moved, had done nothing at all except arrive and sit down. He was the ranking official of a facility that housed 400 students across 14 species. She was 18 years old and compact, in the way of a person who does not take up space deliberately, and the stylus in Prune's hands was shaking. Rethoven pressed himself against the observation corridor wall and made a note. His recording implant, old, half-filled with footage of other students at other stations, hummed softly against his collarbone. He had activated it 11 minutes ago, the moment the Galactic Academic Council's assignment landed in his research queue. 1 week, Halivar Compound, Field Study of Human Combat Returnee Integration. He was not a security professional. He was not a counselor or a military observer. He was a Quilvan doctoral candidate with a thesis deadline and 3 sensory stalks that he could rotate independently in a full arc, and he was using all 3 of them right now. 2 aimed through the observation glass at Kira Solen. 1 aimed, involuntarily, at the corridor behind him, just in case. He could not have told you why. Through the glass, Prune opened the file. He cleared his throat twice, which the voice translator rendered smoothly, but which Rethoven marked in his notes as a stress indicator. Then he began to read aloud, because the charter required him to read the record before initiating any formal disciplinary proceeding, and Prune was, above all things, a man who followed procedure. 2 years of active deployment, Epsilon 9 and 4 subsequent postings, youngest recipient of the Stellar Cross in 3 decades, and then the number, stated in the same flat administrative tone. Prune used to read her enrollment status as if they were the same category of fact. 40% of her unit had come home. 40%. Out of every 10 soldiers who had shipped out alongside Kira Solen, 6 had not returned. Prune read it and moved on. The girl did not react at all. Rethoven's 3 stalks curled inward by a third. He wrote, subject's physiological response to casualty data, none visible. Cross-reference with Stillwater efficiency notation. Is this dissociation, or is the number simply not new to her? He paused over the question. Then he wrote, the second. Prune set the file down. He folded his hands. He said, in the careful tone of someone who has rehearsed this, Miss Solen, the incident this morning, Cadet Moro sustained fractures in 3 locations. His family has filed a report with the Oversight Division. The girl said, he grabbed my shoulder. A pause. From behind. Prune opened his mouth. He closed it. He opened it again. The translator waited. The protocol, Miss Solen, for students who are experiencing difficulty readjusting to. He grabbed my shoulder from behind, she said again. Same volume, same pace. No follow-through. She appeared to believe that this was all the explanation necessary, and the unsettling thing, the thing Rethoven was already struggling to categorize, was that she was not wrong. He had reviewed the corridor footage. The strike had been a nerve cluster hit, a reflex response, executed in the time between the grab and a blink. 3 fractures precisely placed. She had not looked surprised. She had not, as far as Rethoven could determine, looked anything. Prune pressed on. Rethoven could hear the bureaucratic wheels grinding. Our protocol for students in the disrupted learner category is observation and gradual reintegration. Miss Solen is not a security concern. She is a welfare case. He said it with the confidence of a man announcing a diagnosis he has already written into the file. The arm incident reflects emotional dysregulation, a known profile in combat returnee populations. She is reactive, not functional. She needs management, not. He stopped. The girl had turned her head and was looking at the observation glass. She could not see through it. Rethoven knew this. The glass was one-way, standard compound specification. She could not see him. His stalks curled to half-closed anyway, all 3, a reflex he could not stop. She held the angle for 3 seconds, then she turned back. Prune had not noticed. He was sorting papers. He was, Rethoven realized, already writing the expulsion routing. Stay close. What happens when the principal tries to file those papers is the part that still keeps me up at night. 3 hours earlier, or rather, 3 hours before Rethoven found himself pressing flat against an observation corridor wall with his stalks at half-mast. He had been standing at the Halivar compound docking intake, holding a research authorization on a tablet and watching the shuttle from the inner transit hub cycle through decompression. Compound was mid-tier, outer rim adjacency, not a military installation, not a research station, a school in the most functional sense. 400 students, 14 species, color-coded academic wings, a cafeteria running 11 dietary profiles, corridors that smelled of recycled air and the faint mineral bite of iron-filtered light. The emergency protocols posted near every access point had last been updated 9 years ago. They assumed threats would arrive from outside the station. Rethoven had read the student file on the transit over. He had read it 3 times. He was the kind of researcher who read files 3 times before he felt he understood them, and he did not feel he understood this one. The shuttle docked. Students poured out, Vexians, Corin, 2 Quelari traveling in close formation, a handful of humans in the clustered instinctive way humans moved when they were tired or uncertain. And then, separate from them, a human girl carrying a single bag, moving through the crowd the way water moves around something fixed. Other students rerouted around her. Not dramatically, not with clear alarm or visible recognition. It was more like a current in a river, unconscious, the body deciding before the mind did. She walked straight to the administrative wing without checking the directional panels. She had studied the station layout. That was Rethoven's first note. His second note came when she passed within 4 meters of him on her way to the desk. She did not glance at him. She did not glance at anything. She moved with what he would later, in his field notes, attempt to describe as Stillwater efficiency. No motion wasted, no weight shift accidental, every step in contact with the floor in a way that suggested she always knew exactly where the floor was. He had trained his sensory stalks on 12 human subjects over the past 2 cycles of observation. Not one of them had moved like this. He had activated his recording implant at that moment. He would tell himself later that it was standard field methodology. It was also, he would not admit until the thesis was filed, because he had the feeling, immediate, irrational, completely unlike his usual careful academic mode, that he was already watching something he should not let go unrecorded. The implant hummed. He followed her. She had gone directly to Prune's office. Now 31 minutes later, Prune had finished his preamble and was building to what Rethoven had gathered was an expulsion threat. Kira Solen sat across from him with her hands resting flat on her thighs, and she was watching Prune with an expression that Rethoven's field notes were going to struggle with for the next several days. Not blank, not hostile, something more specific than either, the look of a person running a calculation in which Prune was a variable of known value. The oversight agencies, Prune said, have been notified. The expulsion proceedings, if initiated, would take. I'm going to class, the girl said. Prune blinked. She stood, she picked up her bag. She was already at the door. Miss Solen, we have not concluded. The proceeding requires my signature on the formal notice, she said, without turning around. You haven't given me the notice. I'm going to class. She opened the door. You can send it to my room. She walked out. The door closed behind her. Prune sat very still. His stylus was still shaking. Rethoven moved to the corridor juncture, fast, to catch her route. She was already 20 meters away, walking at the same pace she had walked from the docking bay, no hurry, no anger, the same water-round-something-fixed movement. She turned left at the color junction toward the academic wing. She did not look back. His stalks were at 2/3 closed. He checked his recorder. Active, good. He filed his second observation note of the morning. Subject appears to operate on the assumption that her actions are self-evidently calibrated. Ray, the shoulder strike, she has not offered further justification because she does not understand why further justification would be required. This is not arrogance. This is a gap between her threat model and the compound's. The compound does not know what the gap is. I am not sure I do either. He saved the note. He followed the route she had taken. The corridor ahead was quiet. Two Corin's students at a locker bank stepped back as he passed. Not from him, he realized. She had already walked through, and they had not yet re-expanded into their original positions. The recording implant hummed against his collarbone. He had not yet turned it off. He found her at her locker. The corridor was busy, end of first period. Students cycling between the science wing and the language blocks, the usual noise of 14 species navigating a space designed for maybe 8 of them. Kira Solen had her back to the flow of traffic and was changing out a textbook with the focused patience of someone who had learned to do small tasks completely, without interruption, regardless of what was happening around her. Rethoven took up a position near the hydration station and watched. His recorder kept running. She had been at the locker for approximately 90 seconds when Thax Aldrin arrived. Vexian, older by at least 2 years, crest raised to full display, which among his species was the equivalent of standing on a table and announcing intentions. He came from the upper corridor with 3 other students trailing in his wake, the way a larger animal picks up smaller ones who want to be near the decision-making. He stopped about 6 meters from Kira's locker. 6 meters was exactly the distance a Vexian male held before a formal challenge. Rethoven, who had done his species background reading, noted it. The 40 or so other students in the corridor noticed something, though they could not have named what. The noise level dropped by half in the space of 4 seconds. Not all at once, in a wave, moving out from Kira's position, the same unconscious current Rethoven had observed at the docking bay. His stalks rotated toward Thax. "You're the human they sent to the combat zone," Thax called out. Not a question. His crest shifted, a display of social ownership of the space, the announcement that this corridor, this moment, belonged to him and his assessment of it. The one who came back wrong. Kira did not turn around. She finished exchanging the textbook. She closed the locker. Then she turned. She looked at Thax with the same expression she had turned on Prune's office, that specific, calculated attention, the sense of a system that had already run every path in the room. Her hands were at her sides. Her weight was even. Nothing about her posture changed at all, and Rethoven watched 2 of Thax's trailing students take a small, unconscious step back. "You should walk away now," she said. Volume conversational, tone flat, no threat appended, no follow-through statement. The sentence arrived and sat there by itself, and somehow the absence of anything after it was worse than if she had said something more. Thax raised his crest another degree. "Breen Moros is in the medical bay with a broken arm. You did that." "Yes. That's not how things work here. In civilized space, you." "Week 1, she said. Thax stopped. She was not looking at him the way people look at someone they are threatening. She was looking at him the way a person looks at a maths problem they have already solved. Epsilon 9, Week 1, 28 dead in the first 7 days. Some of them were people I had known for 6 months. Some of them I had known for 6 hours. In Week 2, they started booby-trapping the dead because they had figured out we came back for them." She paused, not for effect. Just the natural pause of a person delivering a report. Week 3 was when we learned what certain species do to captured humans when they want information quickly. I won't describe Week 3. Week 4. "I don't want to." "I know," she said, the same flat register. "I'm telling you anyway. Week 4 was when we figured out how to survive Week 5. The 12 of us who were still functional held the station for 9 days on emergency rations and whatever we could salvage from what they left behind. After that, the relief units arrived, and then we got to do it again in a different location." She tilted her head by a fraction. "I have been back for 11 days. I have not hurt anyone who did not grab me from behind without warning. I'm letting you know that you have options here, and one of them is to walk away, and I would genuinely prefer that one." Thax's crest had dropped. Not all the way, pride did not drop all the way that fast, but the display angle had gone from challenge to something closer to a species-neutral posture. The 3 students behind him had not moved, but they were looking at each other. Kira turned back to her locker. She had apparently remembered something she needed. Thax slid down the wall beside the hydration station. Not dramatically, not with collapse or tears. He simply found that his legs no longer wanted to hold the challenge stance, and he sat down on the floor with his back against the wall, and he stayed there. His crest was fully flat. Rethoven noted this, and noted also that it was not fear exactly. Fear in Vexians expressed differently, with color change along the lateral stripe. It was something he did not have a category word for in his field notes. He wrote, subject Thax Uldren has encountered a threat model that does not map to his existing social experience. His biology has registered a discontinuity between expected response to dominance and actual response to dominance. He requires a moment to process this. He will likely take several moments. Rethoven's stalks were at half-mast. The Vindication Plateau was spreading through the corridor the way heat spreads from a surface, not announced, not visible, just suddenly present in the fact that 40 students had stopped what they were doing and none of them were making noise. The recording implant hummed. He marked the timestamp. He was beginning to understand why he had not turned it off. Milik's history class met in the 7th floor academic block, color-coded blue, east-facing windows that looked out on the outer hull and the distant suggestion of stars. Rethoven arrived 2 minutes late and took the observer's position in the rear corner. He had filed a preliminary observation note on the corridor incident. He had not yet decided what to call it in categorical terms. Kira Solen was already seated. Back corner, diagonal from him, she had taken the position with the wall behind her and a clear view of both entrances, which was not the position a student chose for sight lines to the teaching surface. It was the position a person chose when they wanted options. Rethoven noted it and added it to the growing list of things that were unremarkable individually and deeply unremarkable in aggregate until you added them together. Professor Milik was a Koran of the old-school academic type, formal, comfortable with his own authority, given to the long sentence and the unhurried delivery. He was teaching the Vexirian conflict period standard curriculum, the sort of galactic history that filled 3 mandatory modules and was covered at roughly the same depth in 40,000 educational institutions across the Council's jurisdiction. His lecture notes were thorough. His framing of human military involvement was confident and 35 years out of date. The question of human participation in large-scale conflicts remains, from a sociological perspective, one of the more interesting data points of the modern expansion period, Milik said, in the tone of someone finding a curiosity charming. The species classification history is somewhat complicated by the disproportionate representation in active combat units. Given the Class 7 threat rating, the participation numbers are frankly anomalous. A student near the front, Quelari, young, comfortable in the class dynamic, raised a hand. Isn't it because they don't have enough self-preservation instinct, like they don't assess threats correctly? 2 other students laughed. A third one offered, too dumb to be scared. The class laughed. Milik made the small, indulgent sound of a teacher who has heard a student arrive at a conclusion he broadly agrees with, but would word more carefully. Kira Solen stood up. The laughter stopped, not because she did anything, because she stood up, and the room had apparently learned something in the past 6 hours that it was applying now without understanding why. Milik, to his real credit, did not ask her to sit down. He looked at her. He said, "Miss Solen, do you have something to add?" She walked to the front of the classroom. Milik stepped back 1 pace. It was a small movement, and he almost certainly did not notice he had made it. She pulled the Galactic Historical Archive up on the teaching surface. She scrolled without hesitation. She had evidently already located what she wanted and brought up a photograph. Humans in battle-damaged armor, a dozen of them, grinning at whoever had taken the picture with the ease of people who have been grinning at cameras since before they could walk, surrounded by the wreckage of something very large and very broken. Behind them was a station wall. The station was the one that had belonged to the other side. "Delta Company," she said, "Epsilon 9 relief operation. Expected casualties at mission start, 60%. Actual result, 12 survivors, station taken, held 9 days until relief arrived." She swiped to the next image. This is the memorial wall. Names, 647 of them, organized by unit and date of death. Small text, a lot of it. Average age 17, she said. They didn't threaten to glass anything. They didn't have arguments about whether they were scared. They just died, and the ones who didn't die kept going, and then those ones died too, except for the 12 who didn't, and those 12 went on to the next posting. She looked at the Quelari student. Her expression was not angry. It was not anything dramatic. It was the expression of a person correcting a fact that is simply incorrect. They could assess threats fine. They assessed threats constantly. They were very good at it. She looked at Milik. 647 names. Average age 17. I thought you'd want to have the right numbers. She walked back to her seat. Milik stood at the front of the classroom for a moment. He was looking at the memorial wall. The names were still on the teaching surface because no one had thought to change the display. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He did not resume the lecture for 4 minutes. Rethoven had been counting. He wrote in his field notes, first visible institutional crack. A history teacher, 35 years experience, tenured, the kind of authority that classrooms do not challenge as a general principle, ran out of words because a student gave him facts he had been framing as abstractions. He could not re-enter his own material. The data was not new. The source was. He is recalibrating now and does not know it. He looked at the timestamp. He marked it. The recording implant was still running. He found her at the viewing port after class. She was standing with her back to the corridor, arms loose at her sides, looking out at the section of hull visible from this level, the compound's outer skin, the stars behind it, the long unlit stretch of nothing that the outer rim produced in abundance. She had a food container in one hand, half-eaten, that she had evidently collected from somewhere between the classroom and here. Rethoven approached at an angle she could see coming. He had learned that already. He said, "I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm Rethoven. I'm assigned to the Galactic Academic Council Field Study. I've been observing your integration week. I would like to ask you a few questions if you're willing." She looked at him, then at his stalks, which were at half close and making no effort to be otherwise, then back at him. "You're the one from the observation corridor," she said. He was very still. "The glass is one way." "I know." She ate a bite of whatever was in the container. "You were watching for 11 minutes before Prune started talking. Your breathing's different from the admin staff." Rethoven made a note. Then he made a note about the note. Then he put the recorder on active and said, "How are you finding the educational environment?" She looked out the port again. "I keep counting exits," she said. "Every classroom I walk into, I count the exits and I clock which students move like they're reaching for something versus which ones are just scratching. I've been doing it since I sat down in first period. I can't turn it off." A pause. She was not performing distress. She was reporting a state, the way a technician reports a reading. "The corridor outside, the cafeteria has 4 points of entry that could be used for approach from cover. I've been mapping it since I arrived." "That sounds," Rethoven said carefully, "exhausting." "It is." She took another bite. "I want to go back. To the deployment. To somewhere the rules make sense." She looked at the stars. "Here, if something happens, you're supposed to wait for the right people to arrive and handle it. Out there, if something happens, you handle it and you figure out afterward whether you did it right. I understand that one." She glanced at him. "You're writing this down." "Yes." "That's fine." She turned back to the port. "Anything else?" Rethoven looked at his field notes. He looked at her. He had 17 more prepared questions, and he found, suddenly, that none of them were the right question. He said, "The memorial wall, 647. She was quiet for a moment. "Yeah." "Did you know them, the names?" "Some of them." She set the food container down on the port ledge. "I read the whole list when they put it up, all of them. It took a while." She was looking at the outer hull again. "I still remember most of them. The ones I didn't know I had to make up a fact about, something small, to make them real enough to hold. A lot of them, I just knew what they looked like when they were asleep on watch." Rethoven's stalks curled in. He wrote nothing for a moment. Then he opened a new file, separate from the observation log, separate from the preliminary notes, and wrote 4 words, "She is not broken." He stared at that line for a long moment. Then he wrote 3 more, "She is misfielded." He saved the file. He did not yet know what he would do with it. The compound's ambient lighting had shifted into the lower register evening cycle. In the corridor behind them, students were moving toward the cafeteria for the second meal sitting. Voices, movement, the ordinary noise of 400 people sharing a space. Kira Solen watched the stars through the port glass and finished the last of whatever she had been eating, and the recording implant caught all of it: the light on the outer hull, the hum of the station's air system, the silence of a person who had learned to be quiet in the kind of places where making noise got people killed. Rethoven filed his third observation note of the day. It was the longest one yet. He did not include the 4-word private file. He did not include the 3 additional words. He looked at what he had written and realized he was going to have to submit a preliminary report to the council within 48 hours, and he was not at all sure the categories available to him were going to be adequate. The station around them went about its ordinary evening. In the administrative wing, several floors below, a stylus was still shaking. And then the alarm fired. The alarm did not build. It arrived at full volume all at once, a recorded voice cutting through the station's evening hum, calmergent in the way that emergency systems were calibrated to be calmergent, and Rethoven had approximately 2 seconds of pure confusion before his translator parsed it. Armed incursion, Sector 7, Code Black, all students to designated safe zones immediately. In those 2 seconds, Kira Solen had already moved. Not toward the safe zone, away from the viewing port, yes, but moving toward Sector 7 with her bag already down off her shoulder and her hands free, and the change in her was so complete and so fast that Rethoven almost missed it. The shift between the person who had been eating something out of a container and watching the stars, and the person now moving through the corridor with a different geometry entirely. Not faster, exactly, more precise, every step placed with intention. The exhausted 18-year-old was gone, and something else was using the same body, and it had already made several calculations that Rethoven was only beginning to form the questions for. She stopped, she turned back to him. "How many entrances to Sector 7?" she said. He answered automatically. 3, the main corridor junction, the maintenance access from sublevel 2, and the emergency egress on the east hull. Weapons lockers. Sublevel security station, adjacent to the Sector 7 junction. He heard himself answering and understood, distantly, that he was doing it because she had asked in a register that made not answering seem unreasonable. Biometric keyed to security staff. Students don't have access. She was already moving again. She said over her shoulder without looking back, "Get the students to the safe zones, all of them. Don't leave anyone in the corridors." "Ah, yes, but..." "Go." He went. He spent the next 14 minutes in the most useful chaos of his academic career. He knew the compound's layout. He knew the safe zone designations. He was not trained for this, but he was systematic, and systematic was what the situation required. He moved through 2 academic wings and the common block, redirecting students, shutting access panels where he could, keeping his voice even. His stalks were at full curl. He could not uncurl them. He did not try. He also, because he was a researcher, and because he had made a choice at the moment, he activated the implant that he was not yet ready to undo, kept his secondary display active on Kira's tracker signal. He watched from the safe zone on a screen the size of his palm. She reached the sublevel security station in 4 minutes. 2 guards stationed there. What happened next took 11 seconds. Rethoven watched the tracker signal stop, watched the body heat readings of the guards drop to the resting signature of sleep, and understood that she had put them down without the guards ever reaching their communication panels. He checked the medical notation his implant sensor could read from this distance. Nerve strike, both subjects. Non-lethal. They would wake with headaches and no memory of the last 30 seconds before she arrived. Then she was at the weapons locker. The locker was biometric keyed. She bypassed it in 40 seconds. Rethoven's field notes would later record her observation on this because she said it aloud to the empty corridor in the flat tone of someone noting a filing error. The bypass code is taped under the keypad. A pause. That's terrible. She armed herself efficiently, pulse rifle, 2 sidearms, checked each one in a sequence that was clearly habitual, not deliberate, and moved. In the safe zone, a Quelari student pressed up against Rethoven's left side and asked if they were going to be okay. He said yes and kept watching the screen and hoped he was right. The cafeteria in Sector 7 had blast shutters on the exterior windows, which the raiders had sealed from inside. Rethoven's secondary display showed 6 heat signatures that were not students and 30 that were, all clustered in the center of the main eating area, exactly as far from the exits as the raiders had arranged them. Outer rim slaver profile, his research background supplied. Take a group, extract them quickly, disappear into the transit lanes before the compound's security response could organize. The compound's security response was, at this moment, organizing in Sector 3 on the wrong side of the station because someone had tripped an additional alarm there first. A misdirection, clean and practiced. Rethoven watched Kira's signal reach the cafeteria's maintenance shaft junction. She stayed there for 10 seconds, not hesitating, assessing. He had learned the difference in the past 3 hours. Then she moved to the ceiling access panel above the kitchen section, and Rethoven understood what she was about to do about 4 seconds before she did it, which was not enough time to decide how he felt about it. She dropped through the ceiling panel. She fired before she landed, 2 shots, pulse set to low, leg strikes on the 2 raiders nearest the kitchen entrance. They went down. She hit the floor in a roll that took her behind the nearest food service counter, and the remaining 4 raiders turned, and the 30 hostage students were screaming. And what happened in the next 90 seconds was the most technically precise thing Rethoven had ever witnessed in person or in archival footage. He watched it on a screen the size of his palm. She did not stay behind the counter. She moved position to position, not in straight lines, always angling toward the hostages and away from open space, and every move she made covered the next one. 2 more raiders down, non-lethal shots to the legs. 1 student too frightened to move when the exit opened. She crossed 6 meters of open floor under fire, physically took the student by the back of their collar, a Corin large frozen solid, and moved them to the exit without breaking stride, took a shot that missed by a hand's width, kept going. She swore in a language Rethoven's translator didn't fully parse and hauled another student up by the arm and pointed them at the door. The 5th raider, she closed the distance instead of shooting, inside the range where a pulse rifle was unwieldy, a move that Rethoven would later find described in a restricted military close quarters archive as a specific technique with a specific name, used in specific conditions where a shot would pass through the target into the students behind. She took the rifle away. She put the raider down. She checked, in the half-second before the 6-1 moved, that the students behind were clear. Then she stood in the center of the cafeteria. 6 raiders down, hostages moving to the exits. 1 raider, the one with the professional bearing of whoever had planned this operation, standing with a weapon raised, not yet firing. He said, "Walk away, let us finish. Nobody else gets hurt." She looked at him. There was a pause that lasted exactly as long as it needed to, long enough to be real, short enough that it was clearly not indecision. "I've been looking for a reason to stop," she said. He fired. She was already closing the distance. The shot hit the wall. Rethoven watched the disarm on his screen and could not have described it afterward. His notes said only close quarters, 2-step. He went down. She held the rifle she'd taken and did not use it. And then there were 2 raiders running for the maintenance exit, and she watched them go, and she did not follow. She let them run. She put the raid leader's weapon on the nearest table. Then she moved through the cafeteria checking students. "Can you walk? Are you hurt? Get to the safe zones." Hands completely different now. Careful. The same hands that had just done all of that were now checking a Vexian student for injuries with the focused patience of someone who has done field triage before and will not rush it. Rethoven sat in the safe zone with 38 students pressing in around him and watched his screen and did not write anything for a moment. Then he wrote, "She let 2 of them go." He looked at that line. He wrote beneath it, "She could have caught them. The exit is 60 meters and she was faster than they were. I had enough biometric data by then to calculate it. She chose not to." He saved the file. The recording implant hummed against his collarbone. Station security arrived 7 minutes later. Armed, organized, moving in the response formation the compound's emergency protocols specified, a formation designed for threats that came from outside, deployed against a cafeteria where 5 raiders were secured with their own restraints, and one was sitting against the wall holding his arm, and a girl was sitting on a food service counter eating what appeared to be a protein bar she had found somewhere, running a function check on a pulse rifle. Security Chief Relix raised his weapon. He had the voice of someone who had trained for this moment and was finding it somewhat different from the training. Hands, now. Kira looked at him. Her expression was the expression Rethovin had tried to name twice before and was now going to attempt a third time. It was the look of a person who has been asked to explain something that seems self-evident to them, for what they perceive as the 5th time, to someone who should not need it explained. She set the rifle down on the counter beside her. She raised her hands. "Can I finish the function check first?" she said. Relix arrested her anyway. He read the charges in the formal security voice: unauthorized weapon discharge, bypassing secured equipment, assault on station personnel. For each one she offered a single clause correction, not loudly. The code was taped to the locker. Nerve strikes, non-lethal, they'll wake up with headaches. 30 students were going to leave this station in a slaver hold. She did not elaborate. She did not argue. She corrected the record once per charge, and then she was quiet. Rethovin had arrived at the cafeteria entrance by then. He watched them lead her out. He watched the 30 students milling in the corridor, some of them crying, some of them still shaking, and he watched the 5 secured raiders and the scattered evidence of what had happened, and the quiet in the room was the quiet of something that had no existing file to be routed into. He opened his recorder. He made a note. He stopped. He deleted the note. He made a different one. The compound has no category for what just occurred. Neither do I. The existing categories are going to be a problem. He looked at the door she had been taken through. The recording implant had caught everything: the maintenance shaft assessment, the ceiling drop, every shot, every position, every choice she had made to use less force than she had available. He had approximately 40 minutes of footage from the tracker feed and the implant combined, and he was standing in a cafeteria where 30 students had not been trafficked, and 6 raiders were secured and 2 had run because she had let them, and Prune was somewhere in the administrative wing with expulsion paperwork that was now, Rethovin could not think of another word, irrelevant. Something had shifted in the compound, in the night, in his notes. He could not yet say what it was going to mean. His tracker showed her moving through the security corridor toward the interrogation rooms. He followed. The interrogation rooms smelled of recycled air and old procedure. A table, 2 chairs, a recording panel on the wall that Relix had not thought to activate before he started talking. Rethovin noted this through the observation glass, and noted also that Kira had noticed it approximately 30 seconds before he had. Relix laid out the charges again: unauthorized discharge of a security weapon, bypassing biometric locked equipment, assault on 2 station personnel, engaging hostiles without authorization from compound security. He read them in the order they appeared in the form, which was also the order that made the least sense given the sequence of actual events, and Kira sat across from him with her hands flat on the table and let him finish. Then she said, "The code was taped to the locker." Relix blinked. "The biometric bypass was taped under the keypad." She said it the same way she had said it in the cafeteria, with the patience of someone correcting a filing error. The bypass code, written on a piece of adhesive material attached to the underside of the keypad housing. If you check the locker now, you'll find it. The biometric system was not bypassed. The code was used. Relix opened his mouth. "The guards," she said, "nerve strikes, bilateral, targeting the secondary cluster below the shoulder. Non-lethal, temporary, 6 to 8 hours. They'll wake up with headaches. The strikes are documented in military training manuals as the standard non-lethal approach for incapacitation without injury. I can point you to the specific manual if that's useful." "Miss Solène, I'm not asking you to." 30 students, she said, were going to be loaded into a transport and taken off this station. The two raiders who ran, they went for the maintenance egress on the East Hull. If your team moves now, they may still catch them at the transit dock, but they have a 14-minute head start, so that window is probably closed. She looked at him. Is there anything else on the form? Relic stared at her. His hand was on the table beside the form, and it was very still, which was different from the stillness Rethoven had observed in Kira. His was the stillness of a system that had stopped processing, not the stillness of one that had finished. He looked at the charges. He looked at her. He looked at the charges again. He had not activated the recording panel. Rethoven marked this in his notes. Commandant General Sierra Dove arrived 40 minutes later. 3-star human, the kind of bearing that developed over decades of rooms that stood up when she entered. She cleared the interrogation room in 11 words. "Thank you, Chief Relics. I'll take it from here." Relics left. He did not look relieved. He looked like a man who had just been handed a very complicated problem and then had it taken back. Dove sat down across from Kira. She looked at her the way Rethoven had not yet seen anyone look at her, not with the managed patience of an administrator, not with the social challenge of a Vexian dominant, not with the careful academic attention of a researcher. She looked at her the way you looked at something you had been looking for and had just found in an unexpected place. "Kira Solen," she said, "Stella Cross, Epsilon 9, 40%. She said the last number the way Prune had not as a weight, not a statistic. "I've read the file." "I know," Kira said. "Then you know why I'm here." A pause. Kira picked up the cup of water that had been sitting untouched on the table since Relics had placed it there at the start of the interview. She drank from it. She set it back down, precisely in the ring it had left on the table. "Outer terminus," she said. "Separatist conflict, urban environments." "Hard calls," Dove said. "You're good at those." "I'm good at a lot of things." She looked at the cup. "That's not the same as wanting to keep doing them." Dove was quiet for a moment, not the quiet of someone preparing a counter-argument, the quiet of someone who already knows the argument and is deciding whether to make it. She said, "You saved 30 students tonight." The station's emergency protocols were 9 years out of date, and there were no active drills. Someone was going to have to. She looked at Dove. "It didn't have to be me specifically. I was just the one who was there." "That's not how the governor's office is going to write it." "I know." She did not seem particularly concerned about this. 72 hours. Dove looked at her steadily. 72 hours. Kira nodded once, the way you nodded when someone confirmed a timeline you had already accounted for. Dove stood. She looked at Kira for a moment longer, the look of someone filing something away in a part of memory that was not going to forget it. Then she walked out. Rethoven stepped back from the observation glass. His stalks were at half-curl. In his field notes he wrote, "She did not ask for any of this. She has been handed a commendation she did not request, and an offer she does not want, and a decision she will make alone in a compound that does not yet have a category for her. The compound has not yet understood that the category is the problem." He saved the file. He found her at the viewing port again. The same port, the same outer hull view, the stars the same uninterested distance away. It was past the second meal sitting now. The corridors were quiet. She was standing with her arms loose at her sides, and he approached on an angle she could see, and she did not react to his arrival, which he took as permission. He stood beside her. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Then she asked, "In all your research, combat returnees, integration, did any of them figure out how to go back to normal?" He thought about it. He gave her the honest answer because she was the kind of person who would notice a softened one. "No." She nodded. She had known. He had known she had known. She had asked anyway because some answers need to be said out loud by another person before they become real. "Okay," she said. She looked at the stars. "Okay." Rethoven looked at her. He thought about the corridor this morning, the students rerouting around her without knowing why. He thought about Thax Uldren on the floor with his crest flat. He thought about 647 names read aloud in a history class in a voice that did not waver once. He thought about a ceiling panel and a cafeteria and a raid leader who had made an offer and been declined. He thought about 2 raiders who had run and not been followed. He had his 40 minutes of footage. He had his field notes. He had the private file with 4 words in it and 3 more. He was going to have to write a thesis, and the thesis was going to need a chapter, and the chapter was going to need a title, and he did not yet have the right words, but he had the material. He had all of it. "What are you going to do?" he asked. She was quiet for a long moment. "Go to class tomorrow," she said. "See what happens." What happened across the next several days was mostly small and mostly quiet. 12 student testimonies reached the station governor's office within 2 hours of the raid. The governor's office contacted the school board before morning. Prune's expulsion proceedings were rerouted in the administrative system. No announcement, no retraction, just a status change that moved the file from pending to closed with no further notation. Rethoven saw it when he checked. He did not comment on it in his public notes. He noted it in his private file. Kira went to class. She took the corner seat. She took notes. When Breen Morrow's arm repaired scales pale, clearly having spent several days deciding how to approach this, came over before Millick's next lecture and asked if she would partner on the group project, she said yes. When Millick opened the discussion portion, she contributed without raising her voice, corrected 2 sourcing errors, and sat back down. When the 72 hours passed, she did not contact Dove's office. 3 weeks later, there was a fire in the engineering section. Rethoven heard about it secondhand, then read the incident report. Equipment failure in a lab, 6 students trapped, corridors filling with suppression foam before the emergency services could reach them. Kira had organized the extraction, coordinating with the emergency team on comm, moving students through the foam with the same patient efficiency she brought to everything, getting everyone out. The commendation from the governor's office arrived the following week. Someone found it on a bench in the administrative wing, face up, unclaimed. No one was certain whether she had left it there deliberately. Rethoven thought she probably had. His thesis was submitted 6 months after the week that had begun with Prune's shaking hands and ended with the alarm. The chapter on Kira Solen was titled "When Weapons Learn to Heal." Some of his committee called it too sympathetic. Others said it did not go far enough in condemning the recruitment doctrine that had put a 16-year-old in a combat zone. Several oversight bodies flagged it for secondary review. Within a week of publication, 214 academics had accessed it. The soldiers who read it, he noted in a follow-up paper, did not need to be told what it meant. The Galactic Academic Council's integration classification, disrupted learner, as a welfare category distinct from capable individual operating outside institutional parameters, was formally reviewed within 2 years. The review cited the Solen case by name. In the thesis bibliography, a single line read, Solen Field Recording Archive, Rethoven, Halivar Compound, 7-day observation period. Primary source, Chapter 7. The recording implant sat on his desk after he graduated. He considered returning it to the equipment pool. He did not return it. Kira graduated 2 years after the raid, top of her cohort in emergency response and crisis management. She joined civilian rescue operations. Over the years that followed, 214 lives were documented, a number that kept changing, always upward, that the Rescue Service's annual report listed with a quiet precision that suited the work. She still had nightmares. She still sat with her back to the wall. She still ran the assessments. But the assessments were running toward burning rooms now, toward trapped students and collapsed corridors and people who needed someone who did not panic, instead of toward threat vectors and extraction angles and the calculus of who was going to shoot first. It was a small difference. It was not small at all. In a footnote to Chapter 7, one that most readers skipped, and that the soldiers never skipped, Rethoven had written a single observation about the week he had spent following her through the corridors of Halivar Compound. He had written it in the plain language his committee preferred, without drama, the way she would have wanted it said. She was never broken. The galaxy simply had no category for what she was.